we know that there's all kinds of fraud going on. The latest one that's gone to the mainstream news has been pig butchering. I don't know if you saw last week, tonight, a couple of weeks ago with John Oliver. He had a whole segment on pig butchering. And then Alex wrote an article for One Expert, One Topic last week, so we thought we'd jump on top of that. And why don't you introduce us to what pig butchering means?
First, thanks, TJ, for giving me the opportunity. And I'd like to note that I'm speaking here as Alex rather than, yes, AT&T I do work for, but what I express is my opinion and statement, not AT&T's. Pig butchering came, what is it, and where did the name come from? It's a literal translation of Chinese, and it refers to the development, the growth of a relationship of an animal that you're going to slaughter. And it's social engineering. It's a long con, which is typically aimed at getting all your money through cryptocurrency, telling you how much money you can make and conning you into depositing your money into a fake cryptocurrency exchange, which is really their account.
And what are some of the patterns that you see, and how do you identify these?
Well, we've all seen them. The hello, hi, let's have golf, let's play golf, let's have dinner tomorrow. I'm cooking a chicken dinner, perhaps even a bottle of wine. It always has positive social intent. They want to engage you, and typically the progression is send an initial message, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were John, wrong number. Or my address book is not up to date, or I got a new phone, or something like that. And then typically there's a shift off of carrier text messaging onto an over-the-top application. And that's a topic I hope we get back to, which is multimedia, the use of fragmented media channels. And then it progresses typically on this over-the-top application to invites to various investment channels. It's continued. It's grown. Initially, this was seen mostly on dating apps, social messaging, dating apps, and has moved first to some over-the-top services that use telephone numbers as identifiers, and has recently has appeared even on mobile originated.
Brian, what percentage are you seeing?
The amount of pig butchering or social engineering that's happening right now through an aggregator such as Cinch is escalating, exponential.
Can you stop right there? Can you explain what social engineering is? I know
social engineering is so pig butchering itself is a subset of social engineering. It's where you're utilizing the social interaction between an individual P2P to try and get to the ultimate goal, which is the cryptocurrency. Everybody in this room has received some sort of social engineering text message, but not all of you probably have taken it all the way through. Alex and I have done that specifically where it goes directly from a social interaction between an individual and then they, as he had mentioned, transitions you to an OTT platform, typically WhatsApp, and then transitions you into, this is how you can send me crypto money so that my life can be better. So to answer your question, we're seeing it just go through the roof. And as an aggregator, we work with Proofpoint. We also have our own filtering platform solution that we can adopt and morph as needed. The mutations of social engineering right now are wild. Last month we saw an example of this, which was shared with Alex. It all started off with, will you, do you, could you, comma, and then the trigger word was golf. So you might have seen this, like, will you, could you, are you going to be playing golf this week? And that was it. It wasn't like, dear Brian, but that was such a permutation that we were able to catch it in our networks. And we were able to share that through a consortium that we're creating so that we can quickly make these adjustments. We don't have a panacea. We don't have a solution for this. We just have quick Band-Aids. Because everybody in this room has the capability to make those quick changes, and that's what you have to do when you're dealing with social engineering. Because as our colleague from Proofpoint said, as soon as you shut something down, hundreds of thousands of other attacks happen. and you have to be really, really quick to make those changes.
Bradley, what are you seeing across all networks,
Yes.
across the globe?
Yeah, so we're a anti-spam supplier like Proofpoint, and it's interesting because when you look at the aggregate abuse data, those kinds of cold openers, as they discuss, like "Hi, how you doing?" they bubble right to the top. So they're kind of hidden within the legitimate messaging that we see, and it is morphing, and it's proving challenging to stay on top of it. One, to separate the good from the bad, but the changing patterns that they're using. But through in-flight analysis and in-flight fingerprinting and whatnot, it's been proven effective to kind of stop the proliferation of these kinds of messages. And then in post-processing, we can go back and recreate what we saw with the subsequent messages after the cold opener, and provide that data and insight back to our customers, so they can take it upstream or where they need to go, either in a P2P call flow or an A2P call flow, and take the next steps, because there's only so much you can do when you're in line, because this being perpetrated by senders and mobile devices.
Where are you all finding the originations of these types of practices happening? Have you identified?
Well, geographically, much of it is if I can back up a little bit, one of the statements I heard earlier today is we're seeing, and I believe that was Proofpoint CEO early in the day, is that there's a trend towards fewer but more damaging attacks, much more insidious, lower volume, higher return per kill in the pig butchering, and I think that's very salient. As bad as that is, I'd much rather lose. I'd rather do the reverse gamble. I'd rather know that I'm going to lose $30 than have a very slim chance of losing my life savings. But there's another insidious part, and that's that there's a lot of human trafficked labor in Southeast Asia behind this. It's as bad as it could get. And I don't know if that's what you were referring to in that question, or if it's more. Yeah. And so this is really insidious. It's evil. It's just pure evil. And that personally was one of my motivations. I've been studying pig butchering now for a little over a year and a half, and we've had defenses in place. I do want to say that it's not something that we're throwing up our hands and saying we can't do anything about. We are doing things about it, and a lot of what we're doing is extremely effective. It's not easy to send law enforcement into lawless areas of Southeast Asia, but there are things we can do, and I'm sure we'll get into that later in this.
Yeah. Well, so for those of us in the telephony space that play a crucial role, either as a mobile carrier, CPaaS, UCaaS, CSP, or Netnumber or network intelligence, it's our duty to combat fraud and protect customers. So we've come a long way in trying to identify who the content senders are, and we've come a long way in 15 years. However, we still have a long way to go. So my question is what is working? And we'll start off with what is working. Catalin?
Sure, yeah. So there are quite a few things that are working well here. So, for example, there is no spoofing. That's something that the FCC acknowledged in one of the report and orders, and we take this for granted, but when we compare with the international SMS market, there it's completely different. You can freely define a sender ID as being a phone number, a short code, even an alphanumeric sender ID, so it's easy to impersonate, it's easy to defraud people. Here we have this system where sender IDs are associated with the CPaaS providers. If it's an A2P campaign, then there is a A2P campaign and some other metadata associated with it. So by tying the sender ID to the CPaaS provider to a specific bind into the carriers networks, the sender IDs are used only by the parties that have the right to use them. That's one thing. The other thing is that in terms of A2P termination, bypass, be it by gray routing, be it by SIM farms, I'm not saying that this doesn't happen in the US, but is not the type of big problem that is really present internationally. And this goes also into the AIT, artificially inflated traffic. Again, not saying that it doesn't happen here, but if you look at the international market, there are countries where the estimates are saying that you have 10, 20, 30% of the SMS traffic into that market being artificial. And this leads to the problems there that enterprises no longer trust SMS as a channel for A2P communications. And while they assess their communication budgets, they cut the portions allocated to SMS, and then they look at other channels, be that WhatsApp or be it even email sometimes. So in many markets, the A2P traffic is decreasing volume-wise. In the US, we've seen in Dario's presentation this morning, we still have double-digit growth, which is really, really good. So yeah.
Anybody else think what's working well?
Yeah, well, we've been using AI for, I think, a little over 9 months now to fight pig butchering, and it's being effective. Has the problem completely gone? No. It's not gone, it's there, but we're getting results. And I want to refer back to Mike's excellent presentation here, talking about data sources and training, and emphasize that the importance of data here in a few ways. One of the things we've had to do is find new ways to use the data we already have. Yes, there's machine learning, there's training, there's AI. An extremely important component to this is the signals that come in, the information you have. And in some cases, it was, one of the things we discovered was that we could use information we already had very effectively. And another was, and that's, for example, if we consider report junk. There's not just a piece of text in there. And if all we have is a phrase like hello or hi, is there something we can do with that? Well, there is, but just that somebody sent a message saying hi alone is not reason to block that message. And by the way, that has been for many months, not currently, but many months cumulatively over the year and a half. That has been at times over 1/2 of the pig butchering conversation openers, just the word hi. So we're not going to get very far just blocking the word hi. That's not an option. We are not going to get there just by blocking an isolated message with that alone. But when we combine that with other signals, we can really get somewhere. And that's the kind of thing we have to do. So getting back to report junk, every time somebody reports junk, they're not only saying, I didn't like this message, they're also saying, this sender is not in my contacts, and I have never sent anybody this message. Now, if you look at the information we have today as having not just the text, but 2 more signals, we can begin to get somewhere. So another concept here, and I was struck by Mike's, I thought it was very good talking about all the inputs. We're also limited by our information sharing. We got somewhere protecting AT&T without, on our own. We had some effect, actually very good effect. The vast majority of the messages were blocked and sender shut down. But we gained a lot more traction when we started working with one of the service providers, one of the over-the-top service provider that was originating actually most of these messages, and sharing information, helping feed their machine learning with some of the signals that we were able to get. And I really want to stress that the solution here involves our sharing of information. We have a number of information sharing initiatives going on now, such as CTIA's Secure Messaging Initiative, which provide a foundation for enhanced information sharing. And I think that, as Mike pointed out, the attackers are extremely agile. It's our energy against theirs. And we've got to do everything we can to gain the upper hand here, to make the advantage ours. And sharing information is really key here. We have technologies. We have AI, machine learning, and many other normalization. We have so many technologies. We're going to strengthen our defenses so much by sharing this information. And we saw that in this case when we started working with the originating service provider.
Yeah, I think one of the most critical things is looking at, so Alex looks at it from the network standpoint. As an aggregator, we look at it from kind of the ground up, where we look at the message itself. pattern recognition is really critical as well. We're starting to see, as of last week, messaging characters, who you, could you, comma, then 42 characters up to 51 characters later, an emoji, then several other characters, and then another emoji. So as we see those types of patterns that are happening with social engineering, we can then pull those out, see if it's a false positive. If it is a false positive, then we eliminate that. You can create a fingerprint around it. But these types of patterns are what we're seeing. And to his point, the FSMI group is going to be critical. Sharing of information is going to be critical. Everybody in this room wants the ecosystem to be better, to be safer, to be better for the consumer. But it's our responsibility to make that happen. And we have to collaboratively work together to do that. So it is literally all on us to make that happen.
I would agree. I mean, we see one segment of this scenario where Alex described it as a long con, where it has a origin, and at the end there's the payday for the bad guy, and the victim loses. And that's if you only got one section, it's essential to share data and to work on the techniques to detect it. And in our case, it's separating what we consider ordinary conversational spam versus the really vicious pig butchering. Separating that, identifying when we can really see the markers for the worst of the worst, and then feeding that into a data sharing model to where we can complete the picture, complete the life cycle, and hopefully and slow the spread, but also maybe bring some justice to it, and put bad people away.
In real time.
And yeah.
Right. The traceback programs are really good, but right now there seems to be a little bit of a delay because of lack of, I think, information sharing in real time.
Yeah, and just to harp on the point a little bit more here on collaboration, we're not working in a vacuum here. Every district attorney in every state wants this to be the feather in their cap. The FCC chairperson, she wants this to be the feather in her cap. She doesn't want this to happen anymore. So there's opportunities in April in which we're going to speak to them specifically about this. Because if we can just put a dent in it, it's going to be a great mark that they can say in their career they affected this, this, and this. It's why the FCC's clamping down so hard on robocalling and the robotexting. It's a nuisance in the marketplace. So, if you live in a state in which your DA is active, you can certainly reach out to them and say, look, we're doing this, we need your help. It's what Alex and I have done, locally, federally, internationally. You need to reach out and be aggressive with this. If you have like a spam and fraud mitigation team and you want to talk to us about this, or anybody on the panel, please do that, because this is a collaborative effort. We cannot do this ourselves. We're making a small dent, but we all can do so much better. And this is to all the CSPs, the DCAs, the aggregators, the other carriers. I mean, we have to work collaboratively on this.
Anybody?
Yeah, I'd say we're full supporters of information sharing. We've been running the Netnumber Services Registry, which is essentially the sender ID registry for messaging here in the US for the longest of time. And we're working with the industry already to facilitate sharing and distribution of other fraud prevention data already. So we gave the example of Somos DNO earlier today. So we're happy to incorporate that DNO data and enhance our number check service. We've announced last year a partnership with WMC Global to collect information about phone numbers that have been involved in certain types of fraud, and then further enhance our services and make our customers make better decisions. So yeah, I think we have a unique role in the ecosystem where we can facilitate information sharing and distribution.
Are we have time? If we have time, sure. Yep. Any questions?
Hi, I'm Chris Drake from iConnective. I'm going to use a simplistic question just for effect to understand, why some of these attacks we can't stop outright. So if you were looking for the words wrong number, coming back from a subscriber, that could be a huge clue that they're entering a pig butchering scheme. And, quarantine and sandbox the sender and try to understand what their gambit is. Why aren't we doing something like that? That doesn't sound, I know you can't solve the whole problem, but that could be like a great 10% of the problem.
That's a good point. That's a good question. What he's talking about is he's talking about advanced opt-out keywords. And an advanced opt-out keyword is where somebody responds back of, I never signed up for this. Well, that's an opt-out, guys. Who the hell is this? That's an opt-out. The subscriber does not want it. And it gets more expletives. We can have some drinks and I can tell you what they are. But we as messaging platform providers, we have to look for those and we have to adopt to that. The 5 keywords, opt-out keywords are fine. That's great. Yes, we all know what they are. Great. But if I spell stop, S-T-I-P, I'm really trying to opt out. So what you also touched upon was being proactive or reactive. So we have to be proactive in our efforts here rather than being reactive. The spam filtering platforms that we have, they are both. But your actions have to be as proactive as possible. And unfortunately, sometimes it's more reactive. So it's something that we're all working on.
Sure. If I can add to it, first, I wouldn't assume that we're not doing things like that today. I think we are rising to the challenge and doing some things. Some things that, what might happen, my greatest fear is that this will spread beyond the crypto scams and if we don't control, basically what we're talking about here is conversational attacks. And they aren't necessarily crypto limited, but it's been a wake up to me. We have to do things a little differently. We have to have new techniques, and we're doing them. One of the things that's pretty clear to me is if we're going to fight conversational spam, we need ways for end users to report conversations. That's right now we don't have good ways to do that, and I think that's something we need to work on and are working on.
Yeah, I actually really good points on those two. Because as service providers, like for example, for A2P, there's super clear instruction on how to use the word stop, like opt-in, opt-out procedures that we, service provider, have to respect. As far as I know, there's nothing like that for spam. And I agree collaboration being critical. Like, it could be a way for every service provider to, like, it would be easy for users to have a keyword like spam where they can report a conversation to the ecosystem where, service provider would be able to forward it. It's like the way you do it today is you have to like copy the body of the message and forward it to that, short code no one knows, right? Like we could make it a lot more easier for the end user to report spam.
Yeah, I mean, it does exist today with the 7726, 7727 reporting capability.
Which you have to copy and paste.
You do not have to copy and paste. It's just you.
The FTC instructions on their website.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing, though. Yeah. If I get a text message from somebody who's not in my contact list, and I've never responded to them before, and I hit delete and slide left, it's delete and report junk. Previously, it was I had to take a screenshot. I then would have to send it to 7726 as a report. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but that's iMessage versus native.
That's
That's iOS
Thank you.
versus native.
That's iOS.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's iOS.
this is 7726, 7726.
Yes, 7, yeah.
Yeah.
We have one more question.
So I wholeheartedly agree on the need to, sorry, I should introduce myself first. Carlos Bayoso with Comcast. Wholeheartedly agree with the need to collaborate. The same legal regulatory bodies that were mentioned that we, the AGs, et cetera, that want us to fix this are also the same ones we have to talk to about privacy. And so there's this conflict where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't as it relates to what information you share, how you share it, is it crowdsourced? So I'm curious to know more specifically, if you're talking to those bodies, what is the collaboration that should be happening and at what level?
So yeah, I mean, we absolutely are talking to them. You're talking about PII and what information we can and cannot share. So there is specific information that you can share. Otherwise, you can obfuscate the number. We're most concerned with the message sender and the message itself. We are not so concerned about the receiver, the virtual number that gets the message. So when we go into it with that, then they're more willing to work with us, as well as if we can show permutations and patterns that are directly affecting like their citizenry, then they're more willing to work with us.
All right. I'm sure they'll be willing to talk to you more with more colorful remarks at drinks. But thank you so much for our panelists.
Thank you. Thanks, you.